Don't you ever fart on my tits again.
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today we're going to be looking at the second offering from Golden Design Works, and it's not just another rehash of the original design. It's not another run-of-the-mill knife, something that a lot of brands would do, especially early on in their popularity. Instead, this time Blaze has decided to come out with this, the Caliber. Let me get that out of there. Move that along, move that along. Oh, yeah. Now, if you remember a few months ago, almost a year ago now, I guess, I had the chance to do a review on his first design, which was called the Standard. And I really, really liked it. And that had some very interesting milling that was done in the frame that felt wonderful in the hand. And another thing that I liked was the way that he does his neutral ergos that allows his knives, even though they're very, very large, to fit a wide variety of hands. Now, one of the things that has become very, very popular over the past couple of years is creating a knife with multiple methods of deployment. And this is certainly going to have that. So you've got the big blade window here, so you can reverse flick it, you can slow roll it with your thumb, you can thumb flick it, and you've got a corner flipper tab, and you've got a front flipper, which I haven't tried that yet with this knife. Oh, hey, it works. I'm not very good at front flipping, so I'm always surprised when I can pick up one and it actually flips. Now, that has become fairly commonplace among these younger generation, I'm going to say mostly millennial knife designers, is giving you all these different methods of deployment. However, this knife takes it to another level. So you see right here, you've got a button lock, right? You're thinking, okay, so what? Big deal. Connect the dots. Ha! Multiple closing methods, multiple unlocking methods, because this actually is a frame lock. Oh yeah, so I can do it like a normal frame lock, no matter how I choose to open it, or I can use this. And this is actually going to push on the lock bar. So think of the Smock lock. Kevin Smock's lock, how it's been adapted into the compression lock with Spyderco, where there's a button on this side and it pushes on the compression lock and unlocks the blade. Well, this is being done on the most popular type of lock in the knife industry, and that's a frame lock. So it's going to do a couple of things. Number one, it gives you the flexibility to close the knife however you see fit, especially if you're a lefty and you buy the left-handed version of this knife and you just want to quickly pop it down with your index finger. But it also does something else. It eliminates the issue that plagues so many, I would say the majority of button locks out there. The fact that you don't get a detent, a traditional detent, which is going to be pressed into the lock bar, and then that detent ball sits in a hole in the blade, and that provides the tension enough to keep the blade closed and keep it from shaking out. But it also gives you something that you can preload up against, and then that flipping action can turn into like this rocket. There are so many button locks out there that rely just on the friction of the button, or excuse me, friction of the button lock up against the blade. And if the spring in the button lock isn't strong enough, then it just kind of feels weak and it just kind of flops out of the frame. This gives you all of the benefits and all of the great flipping action of a well-tuned frame lock with the addition of being able to close it like your favorite button lock. And the action is so smooth and so fast that this knife doesn't even feel as large as it really is. Because you've got a 3 3/4 inch blade on this bad boy, and it doesn't feel like it. It feels like that blade is opening and closing effortlessly. Now, we're going to get into the TLDW, which is the high-line overview of the knife that gives you the pros and the cons. Then I'll get into the specs. Then after that, I'll give you all my final thoughts in the actual review portion of this video. TLDW, starting with the pros. The first pro for me is going to be Blaze's knack of creating a very comfortable knife without having to go crazy with peaks and valleys and curves and swells and dips and ramps. It's a very straight-bodied design, which I will admit looks a little boring compared to many of the more flagrant or organic designs that are out there. But it works. It feels really good whether you choose to hold it back here where you're normally going to hold it, or if you want to choke up and use that extremely large finger choil. It feels great. Another pro is going to be the very fine jimping and how far the jimping goes up the spine of the blade. Because even when I'm choked up, my thumb will still land on the front portion of the jimping. Another pro is going to be this incredible texture, the knurled texture, the tiny micro pyramids with the flat tops that are all throughout this entire design. The tactile feeling of this is fantastic. I know it looks like it's going to be rough, like it's going to be a cheese grater. It is not. It actually just, you feel like you're locking into it. You've got a solid purchase on the knife, no matter how you're holding it. It feels really good. And they have knocked down all the edges all the way around the perimeter of the handle. So there's no hot spots as you're gripping into the knife. And you might be concerned slightly about tearing up your pants pockets because the ramp of the deep carry pocket clip is laying against all these textures. One of the big changes between this prototype and the production knife is there's going to be a smooth landing pad right underneath this contact area. So it will be smooth, so it's not going to snag going in or snag coming out of the pocket, yet still it's going to be good retention in the pocket. So if you're worried about causing any additional, tearing up of the lip of your pockets, you don't have to worry about it with this knife. I think that he thought that through very, very well. And I will get to more of the comparisons between this prototype and what the production changes are going to be. Another pro for me is going to be, it's going to be this lock. And I'm fairly certain that Blaze has a cool, tricky name for this lock. I just don't know what it is, unfortunately. I will say this is because of my own laziness. I was the first person to get my hands on one of the prototypes, yet I think I'm the third or fourth person to finally release a video about it. I haven't been sitting on it just to sitting on it. I've had other work to do. I'm trying to get back in the shop and clear up the back order for my customers on the knives that I make. And I'm also in the middle of working with a lot of production for my own production folders as well, following up from the success of the Caledon. But that has prevented me from doing as many videos as I've been wanting to do recently. So to Blaze, I apologize that it's kind of just been sitting here on my desk for, I don't know what, a week and a half, something like that. And I haven't gotten to it until today. But it's not due to lack of excitement, because I dig this knife. Now, if you guys remember, I really, really liked the Standard as well. One of the biggest things I liked about the Standard were the milled lines that he had done in that particular frame. And they almost, it's weird, again, to say it, but it was almost like velveteen titanium. It felt so wonderful in the hand. And while this does not have that velveteen feel, it still has a wonderful tactility to it. I really enjoy that. All right, let's get into the cons, shall we? Now, there's not a lot of actual cons here. There's a couple of cons that I could pick apart on this prototype, but they've already been addressed and will be in the final production, so I don't feel the need to go over the same topics twice. I will say this. While all of this design flows very, very well, particularly the shape of this window, the way that he's done this little choil right here for your fingers, it gives a nice shape to the blade window, and it also looks really, really good open as well. However, I had this complaint not just with this knife, but almost every knife on the market that has a top corner straight pullback flipper. The thing that a lot of designers forget while they're trying to create something that visually is appealing, and this nice, clean, squared off look is visually appealing, especially when the company can get it right and all these surfaces are perfectly matched. What a lot of people tend to forget is your finger has follow through after you flip. And what happens, even though this is very nicely rounded off, it's still a contact spot. When you're pushing hard to break past that detent, the first thing that happens is your fingers go right in here. You see those two little dents in my finger? If you have tender fingers at all, that is going to get irritating very, very quickly. I don't, but I still feel it. And I'm the kind of person that does like to fidget and play with their knives a lot. So I could see myself after, I don't know, 100 times flipping this, that's going to start getting irritating, especially because your finger's not just stopping here, it's raking across it. So for me, I'm definitely preferring the reverse flick on this knife, which the detent and the lock bar tension that's set in the relief here is perfect for every kind of opening. They did a fantastic job over at, was it Bestech? They did a really good job of tuning that detent properly for that. They also did a really kick-ass job on the finishing. So yeah, we're done with the cons. That was really pretty much it. The finishing on this is awesome. And you're going to have a few different choices, but I like this dark gray titanium. It looks like that sniper gray Cerakote. It's not. This is just the finish that they're achieving from the material. But it looks so good, especially up here against the satin flats and then the glass bead blasted bevels. It's a really nice two-tone or almost tritone when you get down to it. Looks really, really good. There's still some fuzz there from the pouch. My apologies. That doesn't look too great. So I think they did a fantastic job on these finishes. Ooh, really, really dig this. Okay, now let's talk about some of the changes that we're going to be expecting from this prototype that you're viewing here to the knife that you're actually going to be ordering. If I forgot to mention it, November 11th is going to be the pre-order date through Golden Design Works. You're going to be getting Magna Cut steel, which this is not Magna Cut. I forgot what he said it was. And it's not marked on the prototype, so I can't really help you there because it really doesn't matter. because you're not buying the prototype, so it doesn't really matter. You're going to be getting MagnaCut. You're going to be getting that smooth landing pad under the pocket clip, as I mentioned before. And they're going to be adding a chamfer around the sharp corner on the pocket clip. That was one of the things I was going to knock off as a con. The blade will be marked with the blade steel in a hidden place. So it's probably, let's see. I mean, they could mark it right there like the Roosevelts do, so you don't see it when it's open or closed, only halfway. Or they'll probably mark it down here or inside the finger choil, but it's going to be marked in an inconspicuous place. And the Golden Design logo is going to be hidden, engraved inside of the frame. And he's going to be changing the grind here a little bit, especially the plunge. The plunge is going to be straightened out and everything's going to be brought up higher, closer to the blade window. And speaking of the blade window, this was something that I was going to be critiquing myself. They're going to be doing a better chamfer around the interior edge so that you're not shaving off parts of your fingernail when you're actually deploying the knife. So that's a good idea as well. And there's going to be a post added to the pocket clip so it's more stable. It can't twist and tweak and move around. And the blade is going to be a little bit longer, so it's actually going to come closer to the edge of the frame, because you've got a notched back spacer, which is great, but it looks kind of silly, and it's even more, it's pronouncing the shortness of the blade a lot more. So he wants to fill up the handle more with the blade as much as can be without the tip poking out and stabbing people. This is going to be one of your favorite fidgety knives. If you're a fan of something like the EMP EDC Nimbles, but you want to go really, really, really big, Blaze likes a big knife. I've learned that between these two offerings. They are big knives. They don't seem as big as they are, but they are. So if you like the Nimble, you're really going to enjoy this, because you're going to get many of the same deployment methods with the addition of 2 different ways to unlock the blade. And it's just so fast and smooth. And that's the other thing too. You can use the button method of opening as well. So you can just unlock it, release the tension on the blade, and just kind of flip it out if you want to. What I would suggest to people, if this little corner right here isn't rectified somehow, instead of approaching the knife like this, maybe have it where you're coming kind of sideways instead of straight off the back. And then you're engaging that corner a little bit less. I think that it's another winner. I think it's going to be hugely popular. And I think it's going to force a lot of knife makers and knife designers to now look at different options for their locks. A lot of people love button locks, but even the most diehard button lock lover is going to get a knife at some point that feels really, really weak, and they're like, why even bother making this a flipper? Because there's no detent feel, there's no detent pressure, there's nothing that allows it to rocket out like a flipper should. And there are a lot of frame lock guys out there, because the frame lock is still one of the most popular lock styles in all of tactical style folding knives. So you're bringing together 2 very popular lock styles, and you're cheating the system, basically, is what he's doing, because it's really not a button lock. It's a button actuated frame lock. And it's funny, I felt really, really stupid, and I don't mind sharing this with you guys. So when I messaged Blaze back to let him know that the knife had arrived, he's like, hey, what do you think of it? And I was sitting there playing with it, and I don't think that I even turned it over and looked at it. from the back, and I'm flipping it and I'm using the button to unlock it every time. I'm like, man, you got them to really, really nail the detent feel on this. For a button lock, this is one of the best. And then he just kind of went, yeah, well, that's what happens when your button is actually pushing a frame lock. Now, I didn't say anything to him immediately. I just sat there, and then I flipped the knife over and went, oh, shit, you idiot. It is a frame lock with a button. But because I've never seen that before, it was my natural assumption to focus on the button lock. Now, if I had opened the pouch and it was this side up first, I would have gone, oh, so he made a frame lock. Okay, cool. And then I would have flipped it over and gone, but why is there a button? Instead, all I saw was the button lock, and I'm like, okay, he made a button lock that has an incredible flipping action. And then I replied with something just to kind of, not focus on my stupidity. And he was very gracious and kind of just let it go, acted like I didn't say something stupid. But anyway, I think that if you're a frame lock lover, you're immediately going to love this because you don't have to use the button ever. You've got your frame lock there. And it's wonderfully smooth on the close without even touching the button. But then you have the option of using the button. And that's what's going to make this your next favorite fidget knife. Oh, yeah. Anyway, them's my thoughts. Thank you guys for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.